I owe a lot to Jim Roach on many levels. And I'd like to talk about two or three. One is just the friendship that he showed me over 52 years that we knew each other. But particularly when I first came here. I had been assured by Malcolm McDonald, our chairman at that time, that a transition from history, I'm an historian, not a political scientist, was going to be simple. He said, you know, the Constitution of the United States, you know about the institutions, you've had American history, you've served in the State Department, I was just coming out of state, you know all about foreign policy. But when I got here, none of that was true. The discipline was undergoing enormous changes. It wasn't constitutions and institutions, it was political behavior and statistical analysis and the formulation of new theories about it. I didn't know where I was. And Jim Roach was one of two or three people that stepped up at that time. He didn't tell me how to teach or what to teach, or he just gave me encouragement. You can do it. We have decent American government textbooks. They're up to date. So you're one or two steps ahead of the students. That's okay. And that's about where it was for a couple of years. The department also gave me another course to teach. It was sort of in Jim's field. They called it at that time, Conduct and Control of Foreign Policy. I said, what the hell is that? Well, Jim helped out there. He told me what it was about, and helped me put together some readings and materials that I could start making some lectures out of. But that beginning, that great friendship right there, taking me in hand and kind of bolstering me along, grew over the years. It widened and it deepened in many ways. Another level, this has nothing to do with academics. You've been an important force in my life for taking care of myself, my health and my physical well-being. And let me tell you how that came about. I was here maybe a year or two, and he came up one day and said, Schmidt, let's play racquetball, or no, handball. That was handball at the time. Peremptory. I said, my Lord, I haven't played handball in over 20 years. When I was a freshman at college, it was part of my PE. And I always said we could do it. Insisted. Well, I said, first of all, I've got to go find out if I'm all right. I came out of the Army all right. I was in good shape and hard as nails. But 15 years had passed. I was a couch potato. I was a student. I was a professor. I was in the department of State Department. I wrote papers. No exercise. Well, I got my first physical. Doc said I was okay. So we started playing handball. Enjoyed it. Oh, he creamed me. For months, he creamed me. I persisted. I got better. I finally gave him a good game. Eventually, I could beat him once in a while. We had some wonderful years. I think we played something under 10 years. He finally got tired of it. He wanted to do something else. He took up walking. Miles of it. I never liked to walk. Especially I didn't like to walk by myself. I didn't find myself that interesting. But he did. But I continued with the handball. As I got older, in my 60s, I went for racquetball. I played that about 20 years and finally had to give it up. But something else about you. He was kind of a health nut in some ways. Watched his weight. Careful what he ate. Talked to me about it. Told me I had a few pounds too many. I listened to him. I took off the weight. I stayed active. His initial goading to play handball got me started on annual physical exams. They paid off. Caught a couple of things in time. So I owe him. I owe him. I have taken what he said to heart. And I have tried to stay active. I've tried to stay physical. I watch what I eat, as he did, and not too much. I owe it to him. He got me started, and I continued. Third, he helped me expand my view of the world. As an historian, my areas were American history and Latin America primarily. As we became friends, he began talking to me about India, Southeast Asia in general, an area I knew very little about. I had never taken even a course in history on any of that. We swapped stories about our respective areas. And then, in the early 1980s, Grace and I began to travel abroad every year. Europe. That's what I was interested in. We covered Europe very well, and when he found out that we were restricting our survey, he got very excited. Came to me and said, you've got to pardon yourself. You've got to go to Asia and India. You have to see India. And he began to regale me with all the things, wonderful things we could see. Well, he wore us down, and we finally agreed after about 10 years, okay, we'll take a picture. And then came all the information, all the details. You've got to see this, you've got to see that. Well, we took a package tour. I wasn't about to rent a car and tool around India as we did in Europe. No way. We took a package, and that was great to service. Well, we saw some wonderful things, and we saw some of the things that he talked about. Herds of cattle roaming a great city like Bombay, tigers in the wild in Rajasthan, the great Taj Mahal, of course, funeral pyres along the Ganges, Benares, Varanasi these days. We ended up in Khajuraho. That was an eye-opener. If you think you've seen risque stuff with French postcards, Playboys, and those, you ain't seen nothing yet. It was a great trip. When we got back, he wanted to hear all about it. And so we told him. Oh, he was very pleased. He was very pleased. Then he said, well, you've seen North India. You haven't seen the South. Unfortunately, we never got there. But it was a wonderful experience. And we ate. And finally, we owe him something on the economic and financial front. When our brood began going through college in the late 1960s, it soon dawned on me there was no way we were going to get that mob through college on my salary. Grace resumed her career as a librarian, and we got him through. She loved her job, and she became a children's librarian for the city of Austin. Stuck with it. Kids were out of college by the late 70s, early 80s. And we soon found we had a little extra change in our pocket. I talked to Jim about it. He said, I don't want to just put money in the savings account. I said, I don't know anything about it. He said, oh, I have a friend. Yeah, he has a friend. He's got a friend in any area you can think of. Mostly his students. He said, I have a friend out at Merrill Lynch, George Gibbs. He said he can help him. So he made an appointment, and the three of us went down. And as soon as we walked in the office, I knew this was a special relationship. This wasn't just professor, former student, or financial advisor and client. This was friendship, real friendship, the way they greeted each other. And George Gibbs greeted us warmly too. And we established an excellent relationship with him. And for the years that he was there, and then after his retirement with the young men that succeeded him, all through Jim, we did fairly well. When George retired, two young men replaced him. One had Jim's portfolio and the other had ours. We both did pretty well. Oh, we're not going to compete with Bill Gates or George Soros. but we're okay. We aren't worrying about where our next meal is going to come from. And we owe that to Jim Roach. He introduced us to a man who was a former student, who was warm and kindly, who was extremely able in his job, and we have done it. A few final thoughts. Jim was a very private person. In many ways, a loner. It was hard to get to know him beyond a certain level. I knew the basics about him. He was born, brought up in Iowa, went to Harvard, served in the Navy, had a dangerous job of disposing of bombs and other ordnance that were still alive. Came to UT in '49. It was his first and only position. That I knew. Only slowly, and then mostly since our retirement of 15, 20 years ago, that I learned more about him, his family, what kind of religious views he ever had, what his background was there, his value system, even his finances. But he opened up in these last years, and we had some very interesting conversations. Secondly, Jim was very independent. Gary said stubborn. Oh, yes, he is stubborn. Despite this illness, he insisted on staying in his own home. He resisted all suggestions of going into a retirement community, such as Grace and I have done this past year. I pressed him quite vigorously several years ago, and he got most angry with me. It's the only time he didn't quite shout, but he raised his voice and told me he was not going to go, he didn't want to go, and quit bugging him. Not quite those words, but that was the idea. So I let it go. It's the only time he ever got angry with me. The only time it troubled our relationship. Well, I broached a retirement community once more, carefully, in this past year, when he was quite ill, and the doctor said that he needed caretakers around the clock. He hated it. Oh, he hated it. He hated having somebody in his house all the time. I said one time to him, we were visiting, I said, well, Mrs. So-and-so, she's back there. She's not even making any noise. But I know she's there. She's always there. And then he said, another time, he said, how embarrassing it is, I have to have a woman to help me shower. Oh, he just was, but he adjusted to it, but with difficulty.